especially on the higher routes, staying quite mild in the south with clearer spells further north, 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, but most places above freezing to start Thursday. A grey day then across the south tomorrow with rain and drizzle at times, some of that rain drifting into parts of northern England. For much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, a drier, brighter day. There will still be some showers, chiefly over northern Scotland, and as the northerly winds set in here once more, it's going to turn colder, so those showers may start to fall as sleet and snow, but no chance of that further south with double digits, 11 or 12 in the south, so mild but murky, and that murky weather persists during Thursday evening. Again, some foggy conditions on some of the higher routes leading into Friday. A few more showers keeping going across Scotland and Northern Ireland into Friday, but the main focus for Friday will be this band of rain sweeping in. Lots of people hitting the roads on Friday, of course, so just bear that in mind. Going to generate a lot of spray and surface water, and still poor visibility on some of the higher routes especially, as that rain band then by the end of Friday spreads into northern England and Northern Ireland. Behind it, it may well turn brighter during Friday afternoon. Still pretty mild here as well, and still fairly cold further north, and that contrast for the next few days will continue, but the milder air will win out further north as we head into the Christmas period before perhaps turning colder as we head towards Boxing Day. Bye for now.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. As the nation is left shell-shocked by this picture of Elizabeth Davies, the 93-year-old who waited 25 hours in screaming agony for an ambulance before paramedics had even gone on strike. When will we accept our beloved NHS is broken? I'll explain why 2023 should be the year we finally hold a brave national debate on how to fix our ailing health service in my digest. Next, then my superstar panel give their view. Tonight, I'm joined by Dawn Neeson, Dominique Samuels and Nigel Nelson. After Harry and Meghan's Netflix hate campaign callously took aim at kind and dutiful Kate.
I guess I'd started to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside.
Well, tonight, in a TV world exclusive, the uncle to the Princess of Wales, Gary Goldsmith, gives her the voice she can't have and hits back at the self-absorbed Sussexes who he says are simply jealous of his niece. That bombshell interview coming up at 10:15. As royal courtiers dismiss Prince Harry's Netflix fantasies and claim he simply can't accept that it was the Queen who wanted him out, is this the start of a palace fight back? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, deliver their expert analysis at 9:35. With critics hitting out at an all-white production of Aladdin that references the Orient, are pantos a great British tradition or simply offensive relics? Entrepreneur and star of an Aladdin production, Amy Ansell, the panto legend Christopher Biggins and TV firebrand Kim Woodburn battle it out in what is going to be a very dramatic and theatrical clash at 9:20. They shut down roads, disrupt emergency services and stop children attending their mother's funeral. But who is financing Just Stop Oil's campaign of eco-terror? Well, my senior producer Ben Leo has found a money trail that exposes the liberal hypocrisy of these green militias, and he's going to reveal all in a special investigation tonight at 9:50. After lefty comedian Joe Lycett made a show of David Beckham for taking Qatari cash.
This is your Attitude magazine cover from June 2002, the first ever cover of a gay magazine with a Premier League footballer on it.
So have revelations about his own money-spinning gigs in the Gulf state shredded his reputation? That's our big debate in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And after a year where we lost our beloved late Queen, watched her grandson set fire to her legacy, said hasta la vista, baby, for now to Boris Johnson, and suffered at the hands of eco-terrorists, who will be named the ultimate greatest Briton and Union Jackass of 2022. It's my last show of the year, so don't miss that crowning moment at 10:45. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. So we're going to see out 2022 with a bang tonight, including that world-exclusive interview with the Princess of Wales' uncle. But before all of that, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, on his first foreign trip since the start of Russia's invasion, Ukraine's president says he feels honoured to be invited to the United States. Also speaking at the White House, President Joe Biden said Americans stood proudly with the people of Ukraine as they defended their country against Putin's aggression. Earlier this week, the US announced a further £1.5 billion in military aid to help Ukraine defend its infrastructure against Russian attacks. Ahead of his address to the US Congress later on, President Zelensky said this troop wouldn't be possible without international support.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really wanted to come earlier, and Mr. President knows about it, but I couldn't do it because the situation was so difficult. And now, if I'm calm, I came in that we control the situation, and because of support. And first of all, because of your support, all my appreciation from my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians, all Ukrainians.
Volodymyr Zelensky speaking on his trip to the United States. Now, here the government has accused the unions of representing ambulance workers of making a conscious choice to harm patients by going out on strike.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When?
Steve Barclay claims unions are refusing to work with the government at a national level on how paramedics might cover emergency calls during strike action. The Unite union says the Health Secretary's comments are a blatant lie, and the GMB union described them as insulting. Unison's General Secretary, Christina McAnay, says Mr Barclay is refusing to even discuss pay.
We sit down in a room, you have a bit of give and take on both sides. But I'm getting nothing from him or from this government. All they're saying to me is, we can't negotiate about pay. And where does that leave us? One of the reasons the ambulance service, the NHS, is in such a dire state is because they haven't invested in the workforce. So people leave, those who are left are under increasing pressure. These people don't get meal breaks. They hardly get a day off. They work excessive overtime because it's the only way the service can run.
Well, for his part, the Health Secretary maintains the government is trying to work constructively with unions.
Clearly, we will need to look at the data from today to see whether the exemptions that the trade unions have promised materialise. They've said, on the one hand, they want to cause maximum disruption, but on the other hand, that they don't want to cause harm to patients. So we've tried to work constructively with the trade unions, but of course, if we see significant patient harm, then as a government we will need to look at what is done in terms of minimum service levels.
A man who admitted murdering his pregnant partner and 3 children in Derbyshire will spend the rest of his life in jail. Damien Bendel was found guilty of killing Terry Harris, her children Lacey and John Paul Bennett, and Lacey's friend Connie Gent in September last year. The prosecution told the court they were brutal and vicious attacks. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now back to Dan Wootton tonight.
It's very hard to be positive about the state of Britain's broken health system on this, my last show of 2022. But when this 93-year-old woman called Elizabeth Davies is left screaming in pain while lying on the floor with a broken hip during a 25-hour ambulance wait in Wales this week, where is the hope? When the ambulance drivers and nurses who we trust with our lives put their pay ahead of our pain thanks to the militant and Marxist union barons who will not compromise because they want to usher in a hard-left Labour government, how do we solve this crisis? Oh, and by the way, for anyone suggesting that Sturgeon's hard-left woke-topian SNP paradise is able to deal with the unions in the way the Tories can't, then fat chance. Today, the RCN voted for nurses' strikes in Scotland to start in early 2023. Remember, they're demanding a 19% inflation-busting pay hike that would risk an inflationary death spiral that could destroy our already fragile economy. So I repeat, because this is a nuanced position, I believe nurses and paramedics should be paid more. But I do not believe in the right of NHS workers to strike, just like I agree the police and armed forces shouldn't be able to do so either. They are holding the country to ransom under false pretences that the Tories have somehow starved the NHS of cash. In fact, the opposite is true. This Tory government has thrown billions and billions at the NHS, but it hasn't worked. In fact, ONS figures show they have increased healthcare funding by 69%, or £88 billion, since 2015. That works out to be 39% of all of our taxes, and a huge 45% of government spending on goods and services, all going to the NHS. And that's why we need to be bold enough to have an honest conversation about the fact the NHS is broken. A brave national debate is required to work out how we can fix it. But the problem is, politicians and the MSM avoid the topic like, ironically, the plague. They're all too terrified of lefty parties accusing them of wanting to privatise the health service or sell it off to the US. It's very telling that one of our most recent health secretaries, Sajid Javid, was only prepared to say this after he announced his retirement from politics. Watch.
Having worked up close now with the health service, and I don't think the model of the NHS as it was set up some 70 years ago is sustainable for the future. The world has changed and the NHS has not moved on with that. And Beth, even before the pandemic, it was heading in that direction. And because of the changing demography, people living longer, therefore needing more healthcare and social care for that matter, new medicines and needing that as well. Of course, everyone rightly wants to get access to new medicines and treatments, and also the changing burden in disease. We have a lot more obese people today. We have a lot more problems with addictions. So the NHS needs to change with that. And then if that wasn't challenging enough, suddenly the pandemic comes along and makes it much, much worse.
The solution is obvious. It's staring us in the face, just like Germany, France and many countries with, and by the way, don't hate me for saying this, far better run, far more efficient and more life-saving health services around the world. Private insurance, private health insurance needs to be part of the model. So that means well-off folk pay for some of their health care via some sort of co-payment. And by the way, I firmly believe rich people should have to pay to go to the GP too. I promise you, the current enshrined free at the point of use policy might feel sacrosanct, but when you can actually choose to see your own family doctor whenever you need to, rather than waiting weeks for a 5-minute telephone consultation, you'll understand why this would be a better system. One of the reasons GB News was established was to have these brave conversations about how to make the UK the best country in the world again. So it's time we're all honest that the NHS is broken, despite billions and billions of extra funding every year. So in 2023, let's all be brave and start a national conversation about how to fix it. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the journalist and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the political commentator, Dominique Samuels, and the Sunday Mirror's political editor, Nigel Nelson. So, Dawn, look, I appreciate what's going on today in the NHS is an emergency, really. There are people who are not going to be picked up with life-threatening conditions because of these strikes. But I want to look at this from a more macro level, because isn't it about time that all sides of politics say we need to have a fundamental conversation about our NHS?
Of course it is. The NHS is 70 years old now, a great idea, worked perfectly for a while. There's no way it can carry on working, Dan. It's outdated, it needs fixing, it's broken. I think everybody does admit that. I think even Keir Starmer has said that it needs looking at the whole system, needs reorganising.
But how? That's the question.
This is the $64,000 question.
Some of those golden gooses.
It does, and I agree. I mean, look, Germany has a good healthcare system. Australia has nailed it as well, and they both use that small private healthcare insurance premium if
with the
you
degree
can
of user
afford
pays
it.
for rich people.
Absolutely, if you can afford it. So it has to be an area we can investigate. And this doesn't mean you want to privatise the NHS and sell it off to America. Nobody wants to do that. I mean, it's not even our NHS anymore, is it, by the way, basically? I mean, it's like you can't get an appointment and you can't get an ambulance, so it's not our NHS. It's become a cult. And there's no point in throwing money at it anymore. It has to be mended. We have to stop playing. What was the latest one today? Blowing £100,000 teaching maternity staff on how to talk to pregnant trans men.
Because there's so much waste.
Why can't we just pay nurses?
The NHS seems to care more about diversity sometimes than actually saving lives.
Exactly.
And Dominique Samuels, Rishi Sunak is a great example. On the campaign trail, he was brave. He put forward a brave policy, which was if you miss your appointment with the GP, you pay 10 quid. And what that would have done is actually start to get people to realise this is actually not free. If you just don't turn up to your GP, in fact, all of us have to pay for it. The moment he became Prime Minister, he ran a million miles from that policy.
Yeah, because everyone is terrified of actually proposing fundamental change to the NHS, and you've mentioned a few countries. France, by none other than the World Health Organization, was dubbed the world's best healthcare system, has more beds than the US, better working conditions for the staff there. So I think when we talk about sort of insurance-based healthcare, we shouldn't just lurch towards the US model, which actually isn't that great of an example, and actually look at how other European countries are doing it. However, I think what's important to say, particularly about the strikes, I've been quite on the fence with this because I've been trying to sort of feel out what my position is. But no, I've decided now that this isn't popular on the right, but if you actually care about the fabric of this country, you should care about the people that form the bedrocks of this country saying that they can't cope. And whilst it's all well and good talking about how money is thrown at the NHS, which I completely agree with, the people earning £22,000 a year right now, these are ambulance staff. If you're an experienced ambulance driver, you earn mostly £25,000.
Well, no, the average
a year.
is £47,000.
Well, I've looked, and it says that it's between 21 and 25. 47% of nurses do not earn 40 grand a year. They earn between 21 and about 32.
That's usually the starting
But if
salary.
you look at the inflation right now, you can't just look at these
OK,
figures.
so do you give them the
and
19%
still
pay
attribute
increase,
them-
though? Because Scotland, the Scottish government, sat down with the RCN, and this was meant to be Sturgeon's big moment, right? See, we're going to prove the Westminster government wrong. And no, even for Sturgeon, they were so unreasonable with their demands. We can't afford a 19% pay
I
rise,
don't think.
Dominic.
I think that is unreasonable. But the government coming back and saying 4.75% is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it's the independent body.
But but you can't say independent body. An independent body made sure that MPs got a 28% pay rise since 2010. That's not right.
The problem with the independent body is everyone on it was appointed by the government.
Exactly. Right.
So
it's not really independent, is it?
Sorry,
It's
Nigel,
not
that's your
right.
job. Sorry.
Nigel, where do you stand on all of this?
Well, for a start, I think that I might need some NHS treatment myself, because I agree with almost every word that you actually said.
Woohoo! I knew it would happen one day in 2022.
Which has got to be a first, apart from the Marxist bit, by the way.
Well, they are. I mean, come on. Look at some of these unions. Look at some of these unions.
I think the Marxist jibe is
well, Mick Lynch isn't a Marxist?
No, I don't think he's
He's straight out.
Oh, come on.
But
He's straight out of Peaky Blinders.
On the health service, yes, you're right. The health service is broken. We've got to find a new funding formula. I think Sajid Javid is absolutely right when he talks about, he identifies the problem. Wes Streeting, who actually still is in post, he's already said that the NHS is a service, not a shrine, and we must stop treating it like a shrine, that it must reform or die. So he's making the right...
But come on, where's the policy? Because he's probably going to be the health secretary. We need to see a brave policy from
the policy
Labour.
they're unveiling at the moment is to use private hospitals for more NHS patients, where you get your treatment for free but faster. Overall, what I'd like to see happen is whether you go towards the French insurance system, the French have got the best healthcare system in the world, or whether you adopt something different. As long as everybody who is on a free prescription now gets free health care at the point of use, which is the principle of the NHS, that'd be fine. That's 9 in 10 people. So, in other words, when you talk about GPs, it costs £30 to go and see a GP. Why should somebody who is going off for private treatment go to a GP and get the referral for free? They should contribute to that.
Of course. No, indeed. And I actually think Dawn is right when she says
Bloody hell.
we have to stop buying into this cult of the NHS. And actually, that's something I'm determined to do next year. Yes, there are brilliant NHS workers. Yes, some of them deserve to be paid more. But actually, as a country, we need to have this fundamental discussion. Oh, by the way, on Dawn, guess what? She's here tomorrow night in my seat. So even though I'm not, you're going to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great. Okay, I'm going to be identifying as Dan Wootton tomorrow night. So I'm going to. Yeah, well, you can these days. You can these days.
You poor thing. It's quite a mad place.
I'm really looking forward to it. Sorry, folks, but I just want to say that on that poor lady, Elizabeth Davis.
Yeah.
That happened in Wales. The NHS in Wales is won by the Labour Party.
Indeed, very good point. Very good point. Dawn Neeson, Dominique Samuels, Nigel Nelson, my superstar panel, and they're with me all night as well. But coming up, as courtiers dismiss Prince Harry's Netflix claims that the Queen was strong-armed into booting him from the royal family, is this the start of a palace fight back? Our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, joining me at 9:35. But first, as an all-white production of Aladdin with lyrics referencing the Orient as branded utter racism, are pantos a great British tradition or offensive relics? Well, our heroes off the stage, Christopher Biggins and Amy Ansell, battle Kim Woodburn in a very dramatic theatrical clash. Straight after the breakdown at gbnews.uk. If you want to weigh in, you can vote in our poll too at GB News. The results and the clash straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's time now for The Clash. And not content with censoring references to Christmas, the woke mob now want to drop the curtains on pantomimes too. An all-white production of Aladdin in Liverpool with lyrics encouraging audience members to, quote, come down to our Orient town has been branded utter racism by leading panto actor Benjamin Armstrong. His comments prompted the Race and Equality Committee of Actors Union Equity to condemn the production, which features Coronation Street star Conor McIntyre. Remember, he played Pat Phelan, and called for an industry-wide conference on the issues. So there you have it. The left in this country now believe the great British tradition of pantomime is an offensive relic, but I say, oh no, it isn't. But what do you reckon? Are pantos a great British tradition or offensive relics? Down at gbnews.uk, vote in our poll at GB News. But we've got some legends to help you make up your mind tonight. I mean, he's the most famous panto dame in the country. He has just come off stage. Christopher Biggins, what a legend. Currently starring, by the way, in the adventures of Peter Pan at the Darlington Hippodrome. And from small screen to stage, it's apprentice star Amy Ansell. She's turning out in the Sands Centre's production of Aladdin in Carlisle. And completing our panto posse, it's the Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn. She's a panto veteran too, who took to the stage, I can't believe this, as the evil queen in Cinderella. You would have found that hard, Kim. But look, Christopher, goodness gracious me. This is ridiculous. They're coming for our pantos.
I mean, I just don't know what's going on. I mean, I've been doing pantomime stuff. Funny enough, I started in Darlington, where I'm appearing now. 46 years ago, I did my first pantomime dame. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful career as the dame. But I'm getting fed up now with everybody sort of claiming this is wrong, this is right. What is going on? We are enjoying ourselves. We are playing to packed houses. We are having the whale of a time up here. The audience, we've just done 2 shows today. I've just left the stage. They adored it. And we are having fun. Let us not forget that we must have fun.
Yes.
Pantomime is an extraordinary.
It is,
yes,
and they're coming for it. But Amy Ansell, even though you're starring in Panto and actually you're in Aladdin, you're really horrified about this all-white production of Aladdin. Why? Why does it matter? We're a predominantly white country, and what's your problem?
Well, my problem is that I think, okay, panto is a great tradition, and I'm a part of it right now, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it, but it needs to also represent society, and society is changing, it's inclusive, and it's diverse, and I do think panto casts need to represent that. We have a cast that has several mixed-race actors, and I think being usually one of the first things a child sees on stage, they need to see a diverse society in the form of the cast in panto. And it's very easy to cast people of different diversities. And I don't understand why that particular production company couldn't find at least one actor of color or a mixed race actor to be a part of that cast. It's ridiculous.
Kim Woodburn, this just feels to me like the woke mob trying to run pantos out of business.
It is the woke mob. They know if I shoot the lot of them, dear. Stupid troublemaking people. And the young lady that's playing in panto, I'm disappointed you speak like this. Panto is a British institution. It's fun. It's not politically correct. Men are dressed as women and they look so comical. We couldn't do it better. A widow Tranky and honestly and all I love the Ugly Sisters. Ag and I did a pantomime once and we were badly cast. We were cast as the Ugly Sisters.
Oh,
Women
God,
can't,
that's against type.
We don't need a shocking job of that panto, a shocking job. You want 2 men with hairy legs and huge feet and exaggerated just like Biggins and pushing the old bosom up. Oh, you know it's a man taking it, but it is lovely. Kids laugh at it. Why would we change it now? I'm so.
But I'm not saying to change any of that. Keep that all in. I didn't say that. I said all of that is great. All I'm saying is you have to adapt to today's society and the diverse nature of society and have inclusive casting.
But Amy, have you not thought? Amy, have you not?
Tripe.
I mean,
we're talking utter tripe. And if you're in with the woke brigade...
I'm agreeing with you, Kim. I'm agreeing with almost everything you just said. How can I be right?
You won't get one over on me. I lived in America for 11 years. You're all big gobs. So shut up. I love Biggins. I love what Biggins does. He entertains. He's wonderful. God, do it forever. We had Roy Barrett. We've had, my darling, Norman Evans over the garden wall. You, girl, you've never heard of him. We had Dick Emery as Mandy. Could you want a more amusing sight than his big fat legs and his bosoms? And we roared. We women couldn't do it.
Totally,
you haven't seen
totally.
that.
And I have to say,
Les Dawson, Sissy
no, I know.
and Aid in the laundry.
I know there's been legends, but Kim, you know the legend of them all, Kim. You know the legend of them all. The biggest panto legend of them all is Christopher Biggins. And Biggins, I genuinely think there will be a day soon when you get the woke-topians coming to say, oh, it's politically incorrect to have a panto dame.
Oh, I agree. I think that day could be very, very near. And if it does come, I'm out. I'm finished, because that would be appalling. I mean, I've seen in my lifetime as a dame, which I told you is a long time, I've seen principal boys, and because in my early days, there were women who slapped their thighs and said 12 o'clock and still no sign of dick. And those were halcyon days. Now, And I understand this, that producers want to have boys, men. They want a hero for the other boys in the audience to look up to. That is fine. But there will come the day when they will say, no, a dame must be a woman. When that day comes, I'm out. I've had my time. I really enjoyed it, but not for me.
It's finished.
Kim?
Because seeing you, this big man, all these big men with their bosoms and all this over, we love them. We roar. When they come on stage, Biggie comes on stage, the kids, they're going to do it with a woman? Don't be silly.
And Amy Ansell, isn't that the problem, Amy? When you start giving in to this woke mob who say every single pantomime in the country has to have some sort of particular diversity quota, you're starting to take away the fun and the joy, aren't you? Let's just let the best people, the most entertaining people do the job.
I think that's possible, and yet also you can be inclusive about it. I think there is an essence to British pantomime, and they're never going to take that away. But I do think you can adapt slightly by having inclusive cast, like we had
Kim,
in our production of Aladdin.
I think Kim wants to ask you a question. Is that right?
In your panto, how many Chinese cast do you have, my love?
We have two mixed race.
How many
I am
Chinese?
not saying you have to tick every box and have a person of color, a person that's Chinese, a person. I'm saying you have to have a general, diverse cast in whatever way that's going to be.
But you're willing to have them English people, but when it suits you, you go all woke. Oh, get off, you silly girl.
Not part of the woke brigade. I am simply saying we have to adapt to today's society, which is more diverse than it was 50 years ago.
If you're willing to do that, dear, for your money, aren't you? You're so two-faced.
I feel like I'm living a panto right now,
Exactly. I couldn't agree more, Dan. We're being confronted by the ugly sisters.
Don't talk tripe. Don't be so two-faced, you silly girl.
Kim Woodburn.
Listen, I think you're both terrific and you both have statements to make, but let's keep pantomime.
Yeah. This is brilliant pantomime. This is brilliant pantomime. I love you both. I love you both. I love you both. And I'm going to say, break a leg to all three of you. Have a brilliant Christmas. Our best ever pantomime dame is Christopher Biggins, without any doubt.
Darling, Merry Christmas
without
to you
any
all.
doubt.
I love
Merry
you.
Christmas. I'll speak to you next year. Thank you to Amy Ansell from Carlisle and, as ever, Kim Woodburn from Cheshire. So who do you agree with? Panto's a great British tradition or offensive relics. Well, Jeff on Twitter says, I think they're a great tradition, but I have no problem with people objecting to an all-white production, even though I personally have no problem with it. From Harvey, there is nothing wrong with being white or having an all-white cast. And Stephen says, those who see this as an issue are the real racists. And your verdict is now in. And thank God, my viewers, the best in Britain, 96% of you say that pantos remain a great British tradition. Just 4% of you saying they're now offensive relics. Thank God for that. Coming up, they bring terror to ordinary folks' lives. But just who is funding Just Stop Oil? A special investigation from my senior producer Ben Leo coming up at 9:50. But first, as royal courtiers dismiss Prince Harry's Netflix fantasies and claim he simply can't accept that it was the Queen who wanted him out, is this the start of the palace fight back? Our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, join me. They're up straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, since the release of their Netflix atrocity, the Sussexes' web of lies has started to unravel, with their cruel portrayal of the late Queen being particularly called into question, painting her as a weak and passive onlooker in the firm who was pushed around by her advisors. Yeah, right. Harry even implies that she was strong-armed into giving them the boot.
It was terrifying to have my brother scream and shout at me and my father say things that just simply weren't true, and my grandmother, quietly sit there and sort of take it all in. But you have to understand that from the family's perspective, especially from hers, there are ways of doing things, and her ultimate sort of mission, goal, / responsibility is the institution. People around her are telling her, by the way, that proposal or these two doing X, Y, Z is going to be seen as an attack on the institution. Then she's going to go on the advice that she's given.
But courtiers have rightly hit back, slamming that version of events as totally inaccurate, with one aide telling The Times it's outrageous. Harry never wanted to admit to himself that it was the Queen who said, "No, you're out." He couldn't fathom that he wasn't the cheeky chappie who was going to sweet-talk Grandma into getting what he wanted. So, to analyse, I'm joined now by our royal masterminds, best-selling authors Phil Dampier and Lady Colin Campbell. Phil Dampier, is this the start of some sort of palace fight back?
Good evening, Dan. Yeah, I'd like to think it was a fight back. I don't think it's going to be a very public one. I think it's going to be a fairly subtle thing. I think Charles is sort of taking a leaf out of his mother's book. I think he's thinking to himself, what would the Queen have done in these circumstances? And I don't think he's going to make any sort of public attacks. I think he's hoping that we're going to see some nice pictures at Christmas. We're going to like his speech at Christmas. And then obviously we got the book in January. That could change things. But I think he's hoping that once he's through that, he's going to be into calmer waters. We've got the coronation coming up. And I really don't think he's going to rock the boat. And much as you and I and Lady C or anyone else might think that in the 21st century it's better to hit back, I don't think he's going to do it. I think he's going to try and keep a dignified silence. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I personally disagree, but I know there's a big debate about this. But Lady C, can we just talk about the actual claim from Prince Harry? Because it's so despicable to me that he is now trying to undermine the Queen, the late Queen, make out as if she was just some puppet on a string and it was the men in grey suits who told her what to do. Not only is that sexist, Lady C, it also completely misunderstands that the Queen was always in charge.
Well, absolutely. She was in the driving seat. She is the person who made the decision. She is the one who threw the Lord Lion King of Arms, because he's the person who announced that Harry can't be half in and half out. You know, the Lord Lion is one of the leading courtiers. He's not a man in the grey suit. And, you know, if he was in a position to do it, you can depend on it. He got this directly from the Queen herself. And for Harry to pretend otherwise, he may be kidding himself, but he's not kidding anybody else. And I don't even think he's kidding himself. I think he and Meghan have embarked upon a very dangerous, damaging rhetoric, which they both know is going to damage the monarchy, and they hope is going to boost them with Americans who are of their political persuasion. There's an awfully strong underlying undercurrent to all of this, which is that it is politically motivated so that they can gather greater influence and make more money.
Now, speaking of Megxit, Lady C, another thing that certainly wasn't touched on in the Netflix doc was the devastating impact Harry and Meghan's departure had on the health of the ailing Queen Elizabeth II. According to an insider speaking to the Mail on Sunday, it really affected the Queen's health. Yes, she was elderly and there were other issues with that, but nevertheless, all the Harry and Meghan claims certainly contributed to that. So, Lady C, is it wrong for Meghan and Harry to claim no responsibility for the damage they so obviously caused the Queen?
Well, of course it's wrong. You know, they know that they have damaged her health. You know, they not only damaged her health, they hastened her death, and they hastened the Duke of Edinburgh's death. And even if they didn't hasten his death, they certainly disturbed the closing days of his death. You know, but where the Queen herself was concerned, I've been saying this now for over a year, that they were undermining the Queen's health and aggravating underlying health issues in the most detrimental way. I have no doubt that they stole a considerable period of time that she would still have had they not put all of this tremendous pressure on her. Because remember, they weren't only attacking her and the family, they were also attacking the Commonwealth. So they were attacking her legacy. They were attacking her life's work, and they were trying to negate it. And in fact, remember, this series was done with the possibility that she would still be alive.
I know, that's what I can't get my head around.
On the Commonwealth.
Yeah, no, I know. It's totally despicable. I guess Phil Dampier, Harry and Meghan's camp, like to say, hang on a moment, wasn't the late Queen more stressed about the troubles with Prince Andrew?
It was all stress, wasn't it? You know, she was in her mid-90s. She had to cope with Prince Andrew, said to be her favourite son. She had all the aggravation there. They didn't help. Then, of course, Prince Philip died. So it was all massive. I mean, she had this amazing ability, the Queen, to compartmentalise problems. But, you know, somebody in their mid-90s, the stress and the strain must have been absolutely terrible. And I have to agree with Lady C. I think it probably shortened her life. It's very sad. It's significant they didn't have anything in Netflix about the Queen's funeral, but are they saving that up for a separate programme? I wouldn't put anything past them.
They probably are, sadly, aren't they, Lady C? Because there's more. There's more. We know there's this documentary coming, but I think most worrying, Lady C, for the new king will be Harry's autobiography, which is released actually just after I'm back from my holiday on January the 9th.
Well, I have no doubt that Harry is dishing up yet more fabrication and more manufactured dirt. He accepts no responsibility for anything he's done. She accepts no responsibility for anything she's done. They are perpetual victims. But you know, the reality is the longer this goes on and the more dirt that they throw at everybody, is the more they undermine their own interests and the more they denigrate their positions. Because, I mean, look recently, Jacinda Ardern has waded in to put as much distance between herself and this documentary.
And she's such a woke-topian. No, I know, it was fascinating.
She's totally woke, but she's made sure that she's distanced herself.
Yeah, just like the Obamas did as well.
Yeah.
So I know.
And the Toronto police chief.
There's a trend, isn't there? There's a trend. Well, look, you two have been the best on this royal story all year. It is an absolute pleasure. Of course, it's had its ups and its real low points, especially as we covered those extraordinary days after the late Queen's death. But it's been a pleasure to have you. And, of course, we will speak in the new year as we await this awful and treacherous autobiography coming from Prince Harry. But until then, Phil Dampier and Lady Colin Campbell, have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you both so much. But coming up, as Holyrood finalise a bill that's set to make it easier for Scots as young as 16 to legally change their sex, has Sturgeon opened up a Pandora's box of gender madness? My superstar panel return to debate that in the Media Buzz after 10, and we'll have the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages then too. But first, they've spent the year making every effort to leave ordinary Brits colder and poorer. But whose millions fund Just Stop Oil's eco-terror campaign? My senior producer Ben Leo has followed the money to expose the Liberal hypocrisy at the heart of the Green militias. His special investigation coming up next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Now, it's been a hell of a year for the menaces at Just Stop Oil, who have cemented their place as Britain's most hated campaign group. They've glued themselves to roads, blocked ambulances, stopped kids getting to hospital, and made every effort possible to keep us all colder and poorer. Scores of climate activists have been thrown behind bars for their antics in 2022, with some of them being paid wages and accommodation to cause as much trouble as possible. Well, my senior producer Ben Leo did a little digging to find out just exactly who's been funding Just Stop Oil's nonsense in 2022, and surprisingly discovered the wealthy elites behind the chaos are guilty of their own eco-hypocrisy.
Just Stop Oil have been plaguing Britain like never before, but just how do they afford to sit in puddles, gluing themselves to roads while disrupting the lives of ordinary hard-working Brits like you? Well, I followed the money, and surprise, surprise, it turns out these do-gooder eco-loons are in fact massive liberal hypocrites, funded by no less than the heirs of billion-dollar oil dynasties. That's right, Just Stop Oil is funded by dirty oil money.
Online digging reveals the California-based Climate Emergency Fund has given millions of dollars to fund a global network of eco-troublemakers, including Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion in the UK. This year, the CEF made grants of $1.7 million to activists in 25 countries. Donations mainly come from wealthy elites such as Aileen Getty, who is the granddaughter of J. Paul Getty, the oil baron who was once the richest man in the world with a multi-billion-dollar fortune. She currently owns 2 multi-million-dollar mansions, including a $12.5 million LA pad and an equally as grand Manhattan townhouse. Another Climate Emergency Fund boss is Adam McKay, the director of Netflix climate hysteria film Don't Look Up. McKay's pledged over $4 million to the fund and is happy to disrupt the lives of hard-working Brits, all while publicly posting about his own international flying habits and love for meat eating. In recent years, McKay's boasted about flying 5,000 miles from his LA base to his second country home in Ireland. He once said, "Ireland doesn't have the white noise America has. You don't have the sense of constantly being advertised to." So remember, it's alright for Adam to fund millions in climate fear advertising and protests to you, but he's allowed to jet across the Atlantic to reach his sleepy Irish mansion when things get tough.
I mean, it's absolutely infuriating. Ben joins me now. Ben, I mean, what a bunch of hypocrites.
Well, it's almost like they're trolling at this point. It's all become a bit of a joke. And it does make you wonder, these social justice warriors, male feminists most of the time, but in this case, the Climate Emergency Fund, it's always the people who screech and shout the loudest at plebs like me and you who are actually guilty of the behaviour that they're campaigning against in the first place. And I do wonder, the tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of Just Stop Oil victims, the motorists that they've subjected harassment to this year, do they have access to multiple multi-million-pound homes that they can escape to? Can they fly 5,000 miles across the world when things get tough, or to go on safaris like some of these guys from the CEF do? They can't, and I reckon if you compare the carbon footprint of the two, people like me and you and these wealthy elites, then it's going to be night and day. There's absolutely no comparison. So all in all, as we already know in the first place, it's one rule for them and it's another rule for us.
Well, indeed. And what I found really interesting, Ben, is that you asked some Just Stop Oil protesters if they knew who was paying them to terrorise the nation. Their response is fascinating. Watch.
And the worst thing is, these juvenile Just Stop Oil protester pawns, whilst they're busy blocking ambulances and stopping children from attending their parents' funerals, they don't even know who funds them. Who funds you guys?
Just donations from the public.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know that Just Stop Oil has taken massive donations from, well, oil dynasties such as Jean-Paul Getty? Did you know that? Sorry?
No, it's massive.
No, it has. Do you want me to show you?
No, we're not.
You are. I've just told you. You're funded by the Climate Emergency Fund in LA, of which the majority of them are heirs to oil dynasties, including Jean-Paul Getty.
I'll have a sensible debate about climate science and the climate crisis and the just energy transition, but there's no point if you're just going to throw mud that doesn't make any sense.
I'm telling you facts. How's that mud? Look, this is your favourite newspaper, The Guardian. Just Stop Oil's spring uprising protest funded by US philanthropists. LA-based Climate Emergency Fund donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to activists. They include Jean-Paul Getty, whose oil dynasty made him a multi-billionaire.
I mean, they literally had no clue.
Not a clue, no, and it's incredible. I find it amazing. Yesterday, Just Stop Oil released some stats about their activities this year. 2,000 of them have been arrested, 18 on remand, and 2 are currently prosecuted in prison. They've been convicted. And I find it amazing that they spend so much time and effort plotting these protests, trying to ruin people's lives, make us poorer, make us colder, and yet they don't know the basics of who funds their dirty work. It beggars belief, and it just shows that the weight of their argument is lacking.
Indeed. Well, look, we asked the Climate Emergency Fund for comment. They didn't get back to us. However, Just Stop Oil did. This is what they had to say. We are calling for the end of new oil and gas to protect our democracy, our rights and freedoms, our healthcare, our education, to protect all that we care about and all those we love. We know oil and gas is part of our way of life. All those who fund us know this, and we know this needs to change, and it starts with no new oil and gas. Not answering the question there. Ben Leo, thank you so much for your great work on this. But coming up, after Harry and Meghan mocked and attacked William and Kate in their Netflix atrocity, Gary Goldsmith, uncle to the Princess of Wales, hits back at the Sussexes in a TV World exclusive. He's live with me in the studio at 10:15. But first, as MSPs finalise a bill that will make it easier for Scots as young as 16 to change their sex, has Nicola Sturgeon opened a Pandora's box of gender madness that amounts to an attack on women and could see vulnerable young people suffer. My superstar panel join me for that and the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in the media buzz. That's it, back in just 2 minutes' time.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Nicola Sturgeon has opened a Pandora's box of gender, with the SNP finalising a bill that will allow Scots as young as 15 to begin the process of legally changing their sex, potentially against their parents' wishes. How have we let the scheming First Minister prioritise the trans lobby over vulnerable children heading down what could be a dangerous and irreversible path? I'll debate tonight's seismic gender recognition ballot next with my superstar panel, Dawn Neeson, Dominique Samuels and Nigel Nelson. After royal loudmouth Harry and Meghan callously took aim at kind and dutiful Kate,
I guess I'd started to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside.
the Princess of Wales, duty-bound to keep a dignified silence, finally gets a voice, courtesy of her uncle, Gary Goldsmith. He'll hit back at the self-absorbed Sussexes, who he believes are actually jealous of his niece, in a TV world exclusive live at 10:15. After lefty comedian Joe Lycett made a show of David Beckham for taking Qatari cash.
This is your Attitude magazine cover from June 2002, the first ever cover of a gay magazine with a Premier League footballer on it.
But have revelations about his own money-spinning gigs in the Gulf shredded his reputation? We'll debate in the Media Buzz at 10:30, and in a year that saw a revolving door installed at number 10, Brits turn red over green lunatics, and the heartbreaking end to the greatest reign British has ever witnessed. Who will be crowned the ultimate greatest Briton and Union Jackass of 2022? I'll count down the top 10 at 10:45. But before that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, on his first foreign trip since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the president there says he feels honoured to be invited to the United States. Speaking at the White House this evening, President Joe Biden also said Americans stood proudly with the people of Ukraine as they defended their country against Putin's aggression. Early this week, the United States announced a further £1.5 billion in military aid to help Ukraine defend its infrastructure against Russian attacks. Well, let's bring you live pictures now of the US and the Ukrainian presidents. They're currently holding a news conference in Washington. US President Joe Biden has been saying it's important for the world to keep hearing from Volodymyr Zelensky. And he's also been saying Americans will be with Ukraine every step of the way and for as long as it takes. Meanwhile, President Zelensky has been saying every dollar spent by the United States will strengthen global security. That's the news conference that's happening right now in Washington. More and highlights from that in our next hour of news. Meanwhile, here at home, the government's accused unions representing ambulance workers of making a conscious choice to harm patients by going out on strike.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When?
But the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, claims unions are refusing to work with the government at a national level on how paramedics are going to cover emergency calls during strike action. The Unite union says the Health Secretary's comments are a blatant lie. The GMB union described them as insulting. And Unison's General Secretary, Christina McAnay, says Mr Barclay's even refusing to discuss pay.
We sit down in a room, you have a bit of give and take on both sides. But I'm getting nothing from him or from this government. All they're saying to me is, we can't negotiate about pay. And where does that leave us? One of the reasons the ambulance service, the NHS, is in such a dire state is because they haven't invested in the workforce. So people leave. Those who are left are under increasing pressure. These people don't get meal breaks. They hardly get a day off. They work excessive overtime because it's the only way the service can run.
Now, a final vote on controversial gender reforms in Scotland has been delayed until tomorrow. MSPs were supposed to vote this evening, but instead continued to debate aspects of the bill. The bill will remove the requirement for a medical diagnosis of so-called gender dysphoria in order to receive a gender recognition certificate. It would also shorten the time people must live in their acquired gender from 2 years to 3 months. Dozens of people gathered outside to protest outside the Scottish Parliament, raising their concerns over its possible impact for the safety of women and girls. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Front pages in, straight to them. The Metro reports that some ambulance staff left their picket lines completely during their first strike in 32 years as they dashed to 999 emergencies. More than 10,000 still walked out, though, across England and Wales, demanding better pay and working conditions. The Independent warns that the NHS faces its worst days as the knock-on effect of 2 consecutive strikes by nurses and emergency workers, combined with rising winter pressures, causes chaos. The Eye also leads on the turmoil caused by the NHS strikes, with bigger walkouts expected in the new year. Ongoing delays to ambulances are predicted for the rest of this week. Deadly silence is the headline in the Daily Mirror as they highlight Rishi Sunak's and Steve Barclay's lack of response to striking public sector workers, although, of course, they have responded regularly and constantly, including Steve Barclay today. My superstar panel back with me now, the journalist and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Now, Nicola Sturgeon's bid to erase women's rights in Scotland should imminently be given the green light as Holyrood is set to vote in favour of SNP's gender recognition bill. The vote will allow 16-year-olds to legally change their gender, including on their birth certificate, and they can get the ball rolling when they are just 15 by living as their chosen sex for the required 6-month period, which has been brought down from 2 years. Critics, including J.K. Rowling, fear the law change will leave vulnerable children at huge risk from permanent damage. Others believe Scotland will become a hub for youngsters travelling hundreds of miles to a different country to get sex changes. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross was repeatedly told to sit down in the chamber this evening, and he was even threatened with being kicked out as he fought to get the debate postponed until the new year, arguing there simply wasn't enough time to analyse all the 150 mammoth amendments properly.
Surely the First Minister could meet with myself and other party leaders to look at scheduling the remainder of this debate on amendments and the Stage 3 debate early in the new year, so this Parliament can be fully apprised of all the points before it votes on this issue.
I would stress very strongly that you are skirting close to being in contempt of the Parliament by calling into question a ruling by the presiding officer.
So as of now, Scottish MPs still debating this issue in Holyrood, and it's believed the crunch vote will be happening tomorrow. But as we wait for the inevitable, our critics of scheming Sturgeon write that the First Minister has betrayed the women of Scotland and opened a Pandora's box, really, that could see vulnerable children suffer. Dominique Samuels.
I think this policy is absolutely disgusting. It's appalling. And I think I would say actually an attack on parents, because what it's deliberately doing is it's creating a chasm between children and their parents. You know, most parents will say to their kids, you are making an absolutely life-changing decision, and these decisions are often medicalised now, so, you know, children can mutilate themselves, they can sterilise themselves and fundamentally change
irreversible
their bodies.
Treatments.
Yeah, irreversibly.
Puberty blockers.
Yeah, These are all medical
I've spoken
treatments.
to these youngsters who have detransitioned and
Exactly.
it can ruin their lives.
But now, what's really worrying about this is parents won't even have a proper say over what these children do. And when you're a young teenager, you do have funny ideas, and some of those ideas are that you might want to live in another body. And what's doubly disgusting is that you don't even need to be diagnosed as having gender dysphoria in order for you to make these changes.
You can
That's
just
what
decide now.
transgenderism is. It's gender dysphoria. People may have mental health issues that they haven't addressed that may not be remedied and probably will not be remedied by a sex change, and this completely ignores that.
Well, and a lot of issues with sexuality as well, and folk find out and discover their sexuality as teenagers. I've had Kira Bell on this show, and she obviously took the legal case against the now shuttered Tavistock clinic, and for her it was about working out, actually, this isn't about needing a sex change. It's about having to face up to my sexuality. The problem is it's too late. Some of the changes that she has gone through are completely irreversible, which is why, Nigel, I'm so shocked that you say you're with Scheming Sturgeon on this. Why?
Yeah, I mean, but it's my instinct that it is a basic human right nowadays to be able to choose your own gender. That doesn't...
At 15?
Yeah,
with
15,
no medical sign-off?
Yes, I mean, I think that what Nicola Sturgeon is doing is taking away many of the obstacles that were there in the first place to make it easier. The difficulty is the practical ramifications of it. And I do think that you actually do these things sort of not to try and do everything at once. So, for instance, when same-sex relationships were being legislated for, it took a while to sort out the various anomalies. So, for instance, 18-year-old men could indulge in sexual practices that remained illegal for 25 years for an 80-year-old man and woman. When same-sex marriage was introduced, it took a while then to sort out the equality, so straight couples could have a civil partnership should they want it. I think we're in the same kind of area, that various different problems will keep coming up, and we'll have to actually address those anomalies as we hit them.
The biggest being women's rights, which...
I know you get fired up on this, Dawn, and actually I think it's a false equivalence comparing this to gay marriage.
I was about to say that. I think it is as well.
Why?
Because this is about actually trying to deny biological and scientific reality. It's a very different thing.
Isn't forbidding same-sex relationships doing the same thing?
No, because believing you are born in the wrong body at 15 years old isn't the same as two gay men wanting to get married. I think that is a false equivalent.
Yeah.
But Dawn, you get very angry.
I get very angry about this as a woman.
Fire up at Nigel. Go on.
I'm just going to say, look, I think
for
obviously the fact that 15-year-olds who are they're 15, their bodies are flooded with hormones. They're very you rebel at 15.
Exactly.
Go and get a tattoo, smoke, drink, go out with unsuitable people, whatever. But, I mean, to give a 15-year-old who wants to rebel against their parents and authority in any case the ability to do this by actually, as you said, Dominic, quite rightly, mutilating himself, but taking the child thing away from it, I mean, this is an attack on women's rights as well, Nigel. It means you or Dan could travel to Scotland, live there for 3 months, say, I'm a woman now, not do anything physically, still look like you are with all your bits, allegedly. Yeah, I've heard about it, don't worry. I've met your wife. But you could travel up there, live there for 3 months, come back to England and say, I'm a woman now, and come into the same changing room as Dominic and I are getting changed in.
Dangerous.
And you're a woman.
Yeah, these are...
This gives you the right. It takes Dominic and my rights away. Yeah.
But
gives
these are
you
the
those
anomalies
rights.
I'm talking about that have to be actually sorted out once you've...
Well, it's a bit more than an anomaly.
That's not an anomaly.
Because what Sturgeon's doing is she's taking away some of the medical processes that at least made people know that this wasn't just a man with a bit of a sick sexual fantasy.
Which is what a lot of those types of people they'll be jumping at the chance to say, hey, I'm a lady.
But they could have done that anyway.
No, but before
this makes
officially...
the process easier, I accept. But then you control that through different laws, which is penalties for fraudulently trying to do it. At the moment, it's 2 years. Increase it to 5.
But you could just say, I'm a woman in Scotland now, and that's fine.
Yeah,
at least at the moment, you need medical our medical backup, medical proof, you need to be
assessed. And the reason, by the way, that medical backup is so important is because of the mental health of the young people that are going through the transitioning process. This idea that somehow putting in some medical barriers was some sort of bad thing, stopping people transitioning, is so frustrating.
But at 16 they have the vote. I mean, at 16 in Scotland you're an adult.
But I completely disagree with 16-year-olds having the vote. I think it's completely outrageous. And we know why Sturgeon's done it, because she knows that 16-year-olds are much more likely to buy into a ridiculous independence fantasy and keep her in power for a generation. So to be honest, the fact that 16-year-olds have the vote is neither here nor there. But at 16 years old, I mean, look, I just recommend, Nigel, you actually sit down, interview some of these detransitioners like Cara Bell, because when you hear their stories,
I do know about her case, and I can see what went wrong there. Yeah, I can see what went wrong there, and these are the sort of things I'm talking about, which is why you need to go fairly gently.
Yeah, but this ain't gentle.
But we come
Nothing
back
about
to,
this is gentle.
Do you have the basic human right to decide your gender?
No, because you can't decide your gender.
Yes, you can. You can't decide your biological sex.
Your gender legally.
You can decide your gender.
But
That's the point.
do Dominic and I have the basic human right as women to say what is right and safe for us? No, that is being taken away from us.
And not having you in the dressing room. But look, this bill will pass, but good on the SNP rebels who are holding firm against scheming Sturgeon. Nigel Nelson, Dominic Samuels, Dawn Neeson. Do stand by, because coming up, is lefty comedian Joe Lycett a hypocrite for making money off guitar gigs while criticising David Beckham for his involvement with the Gulf state? My superstar panel are going to return to debate that, and we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But first, after royal loudmouths Harry and Meghan callously took aim at kind and dutiful Kate, the uncle of the Princess of Wales, Gary Goldsmith, issues the defence she would never be able to. He's live in a TV World exclusive with me in the studio, straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Time now for our TV exclusive with the Princess of Wales' beloved uncle. Tonight, Gary Goldsmith steps forward in the aftermath of Harry and Meghan's latest attack on the royals and the knowledge that his niece, born Kate Middleton, and husband, Prince William, are constrained by the royals' sort of it's never explain, never complain mantra, isn't it? Let's be honest. Gary is the 57-year-old only brother of Kate's mother, Carol, and a highly successful multi-millionaire businessman in his own right. Like some of Meghan Markle's family, Gary has had his own scrapes in the past, but in stark contrast to how the Duchess of Sussex cancelled her own father and siblings, Gary recently told the Daily Mail newspaper and Mail Plus online how Kate never turned her back on him despite causing her embarrassment. He said, "The first time when I became victim of negative headlines, the very first call I got was from my sister Carol saying, 'Catherine's been on the phone. Everyone feels for you. They want you to know they are really sorry. Are you okay? How are you coping?'" And it's so great to have Gary Goldsmith here now. Gary, it feels so unfair that your niece, Kate, is the target of this international documentary. She's been purposefully portrayed, I think, completely unfairly and incorrectly as some sort of nasty stepsister. And she can't respond. You're her uncle. What do you want to say?
Thank you for having me here.
Great.
Love to meet you. I think ultimately I'm not talking on anyone's behalf. So it's not my job, it's not my responsibility. I'm certainly not qualified. There are better people qualified to say the family perspective. But when it became so personal, and following the Oprah interview, it was just quite dark. And I just thought the whole thing was becoming untenable. And I had a bit of a hissy fit on social media. And as a result of that, then people were asking me questions. But I think it just got to that point where they're over there, they're taking pot shots at us as a nation, the royal family, which I love, and then my niece. And I just didn't want anyone to have a bad word said about my niece because she is borderline perfectly perfect.
Well, I was going to say,
really special.
Tell me about the real Kate, because you know her behind the pomp and the formality.
Well, and again, she does hug. She is open, and the Kate that you see is the real Kate. I think they had to work very hard on that Netflix series to find one picture of where she might not have looked radiant and glowing and full of joy and full of love, and they used it repeatedly. Kate is a really special girl. The word is she's a commoner. Now, there's nothing common about Kate. She's exceptional. Yeah. And I think she's melted into a role, and she takes her role and responsibility and that sense of privilege incredibly seriously. And it's family, monarchy. I think it's very difficult to express anything without using superlatives when it comes to Kate. But from tomboy to princess, it has been a fairy tale. If you were to meet her, she'd make you feel instantly special. And if there is anything common about her, it might be that common touch where she can just beam you with a smile and you'll just melt. She's a very, very, very classy lady.
Well, it's interesting that you say she's a hugger, Gary, because, look, I want to play you the moment from the Netflix documentary when Meghan suggests quite the opposite. Have a look at this.
Always been a hugger. I didn't realize that is really jarring for a lot of Brits. I guess I'd started to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside. That there is a forward-facing way of being. And then you close the door and you go, oh, great. Okay, we can relax now. But that formality carries over on both sides. And that was surprising to me.
But Gary, you say in stark contrast to that, actually Kate is a real hugger, and I believe she proved the point at her sister Pippa's wedding.
I just find that almost laughable. It's beyond belief. And what on earth was the point in doing this? I don't really think Meghan's a bad person, but that is just ridiculous.
It's sad, isn't it?
Oh, it's pitifully sad, because I think we would have always been interested in what they were going to do anyway. At Pippa's wedding, I mean, Kate is glorious, and she spotted myself and my daughter, and she just smiled with her eyes, and she excused herself from a conversation, and she ran over. And at a fair clip, a proper trot, in front of us, and introduced the future king, Prince George, and obviously just winked at me and said, well, the most important Roman lady in the room is Tallulah. And she asked if if George would like to shake hands, hug, or a high five. And he went straight in for a hug. And then he did exactly the same with me, and we're kissing and talking until Carol whirled in like a dervish and took Kate and my daughter away just to see Pip behind the scenes. Now, Kate is just lovely.
Which is the total opposite of what Meghan would make you think in that documentary.
No, if Hollywood came in knocking and then we were asking Meghan, can she curtsy, I think we'd find out for a part. She'd definitely say yes, without all the razzmatazz and jazz hands.
Well, we've seen that, haven't we? The other thing, actually, that I thought was more damaging, though, if I'm honest, Gary, was when Prince Harry, who has obviously had this terrible fallout with his brother, William, tries to suggest that maybe William didn't marry Kate for the right reasons. So I know you'll have a lot to say on this, but let's just have a look at the clip first.
Many people in the family, especially obviously the men, there can be a temptation or an urge to marry someone who would fit the mold, as opposed to somebody who you perhaps are destined to be with. The difference between making decisions with your head or your heart.
Now, of course, the clear implication there was that he had followed his heart by marrying Meghan and William had followed his head by marrying Kate. But you have seen them together, William and Kate, away from the cameras. Are they really in love? Is this a true love story?
I've seen them together in very unguarded moments. At Carol's house, where the first time I ever met William, he was making cups of tea and Kate was cooking supper. They are very comfortable with each other and they tease each other, which I think is a very great telltale that people get on when they can actually have fun at each other's expense. And it's done in a very tongue-in-cheek, very loving way, touchy-feely, and it's a very natural relationship. I think you can see it at all weddings, you can see it when they're out and doing public duties together. There's still smiles across the table at each other. That was a relationship that was born out of a friendship first at school and then at university, and they've taken their time. There's been no rush. I think everything that happens within the royal family is an evolution. It takes its time and they find their own balance and path, whereas we're looking at Meghan and everything needs to be a revolution there. And there's natural conflict. I think that's very unfair of Harry to suggest that. And if you can hear that, that's an entire nation rolling its eyes at this stuff. It's just not true. We want the brothers to get back.
And it feels like it has been a true love story. The other thing that I thought was really fascinating was the contrast to how Meghan treated her family members the moment that they got in a little bit of trouble. We know the story about Thomas Markle and the photographers and all that. By the way, I don't actually buy into this thing that Thomas Markle committed some crime. You know, he did a deal with a photographer, who cares? But for whatever reason, Meghan felt that was such a terrible offence, she was going to cut her father off forevermore. Now, Gary, when you have created headlines, Carol and Kate didn't react in the same way.
I think there's multiple elements to that whole story. One, if you're trying to get back in touch with your father and explain what's going on and protect him from what is about to happen, why would you write to them? You pick up a phone, you try to communicate properly.
Get on a plane. You know, your dad's nearly died. You know, was close
Give
to
the guy
death.
a hug.
Yeah,
Apparently, you're a hugger.
Yeah.
But with me, everyone has been really cool and supportive, and we didn't ask for this. I love my family. I love my niece. I think my relationship with the kids is absolutely special. You don't get support. There isn't a guide. You are thrust in front of a spotlight, and I try to be a decent version of myself, and I try to be better. And I'm sometimes a walking car crash, and I know that.
Never cut you out.
No, but there's always a means and a way, and there's no been any public fallouts. I'm sure they're very frustrated occasionally, and I'm rightly so. But I don't hide behind anything. I made my own mistakes.
And that's family, isn't it? Because blood is thicker than water, and what we realise over the course of our lives is the people who will always be there for us in those very dark moments are our family members. And I think Carol, your sister, and Kate should be judged very positively for the way that they dealt with some of your situation and the way that I think Meghan dealt with her father and her sister and her brother personally. And I'm not putting this into your words, but personally, in my opinion, I think it says a lot about the character of the people involved.
And I don't think our opinion is just ours. I think a lot of people share that opinion. I appreciate the fact that publicly you're saying that, because they're good people.
Well, look, I'm so glad that you've come to defend the honour of Catherine, we should call her today, because anyone who I speak to behind the scenes in the royal households always points out that Kate treats her staff impeccably, and that was actually the main reason her and Meghan fell out in the first place, because Meghan had been speaking to staff in a way that Kate found inappropriate. And to me, I think, again, that says quite a lot about the person. But look, Gary Goldsmith, so lovely to meet you.
Merry
Thank you for
Christmas.
sticking up for your niece, the future Queen, tonight. And Merry Christmas to you too, Gary. But coming up, in a year of political strife, green terror and the end of Queen Elizabeth's historic reign, who will be crowned my ultimate greatest Briton and Union Jackass of 2022? I will count down the top 10. You don't want to miss this at 10:45. But next, is Joe Lycett a hypocrite for cashing in on Qatar despite criticising David Beckham's involvement? And with practically every World Cup virtue singer exposed, why should anyone take do-gooding celebrities seriously? My superstar panel return to debate this after the break, and we'll have more of the newspapers on the way too.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, and then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Front pages are in, straight to The Guardian, which leads on the NHS bracing for a surge in patients after strikes by ambulance staff. The publication reports that 999 services will be overloaded from now until Christmas. The Sun delights Line of Duty fans across the nation with news that the hit BBC police drama will return for a 3-part special, potentially as early as next Christmas. Oh my goodness, I'm still only on about episode 2. Of series 1, so I've got a long way to go. I know. I've got a lot to watch. Superstar panel back. Political commentator Dominic Samuels, former editor of the Daily Star Dawn Neeson, and the Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Now, lefty comedian Joe Lycett is facing a hypocrisy storm after photos emerged of him performing in Qatar years before his virtue signalling campaign against David Beckham. Lycett last month branded Becks a disgrace for accepting a megabucks contract with the Gulf state and initially appeared to follow through on his highly publicised threat to shred £10,000 if the ex-England captain failed to cancel his deal over the country's anti-LGBT laws and human rights abuses. But he later posted this clarification featuring another pointed shredding.
The truth is, the money that went into the shredder was real, but the money that came out was fake. One thing I'll shred. This is your Attitude magazine cover from June 2002, the first ever cover of a gay magazine with a Premier League footballer on it.
But as always, with these do-gooding celebs, it turns out Lycett is a big, fat hypocrite. As revealed in his own 2017 autobiography, Parsnips Buttered, Lycett was more than happy to profit off the Qataris with several money-spinning gigs for the Foster's Laughter Factory back in 2015. The comedian, who goes by the moniker Mummy, took to Twitter to try and salvage his shredded reputation today, saying, "I did 2 gigs in Doha in 2015. If you're interested, I was paid a few £100, not by Qatar, but by UK comedy promoters. But it was 2015, and that went a lot further back then." Well, tonight, I'm giving him a piece of his own medicine. Here's what I think of your apology, Joe.
Joe Lycett, you don't have a shred of integrity left. Neither does Beckham, by the way, but neither do you.
Embarrassing, I know. Now, look, Dominic, if you are going to make some huge deal, a Channel 4 series slamming David Beckham for his connections to the Qataris, come on, at the very least, you've got to own up at the start and hold your hands up and say, look, I've learnt my lesson 7 years ago. I was in Qatar making lots of money.
Exactly, but obviously he knew that if he were to stipulate that before he went on his virtue signalling tirade, that people would actually take a step back and be like, Wait a minute, so it was OK for you to take money and profit from Qatar? I mean, he can say that it was a UK comedy company, but you're still in Qatar, you're still helping the country's economy and actually helping its tourism, which by extension is helping a regime that oppresses LGBT people.
Because, Dawn, we
treats
saw
workers
this with
terribly.
Alex Scott too, you know, because she wore that little One Love armband, but then had been holidaying in Dubai. It's like, you know, I think Beckham is disgraceful for what he did. I've been very critical of him, but Lycett has been exposed here, has he not?
Oh, come on. We have got a pandemic of hypocrisy at the moment, haven't we? It's not a left thing. It's not a right thing. It's pretty much everybody's infected by this. And the main symptom is it does seem to be being called Gary and talking out your backside. But it is just everybody who lectures us on anything at the moment is soon found out, aren't they? I mean, it's across the board, from politicians to sports stars to the royals. Remember Prince Charles saying how he ran his Mercedes or wherever it was on leftover wine? I mean, for a start, who has leftover wine? What is that, for a start? And he completely forget to point out that he had motorcycle outriders by him on gas-guzzling motorbikes.
Well, it's like best not to try and morally lecture people. on how
Exactly,
to
just
live their
shut
lives.
up.
Nigel Nelson?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a material difference between what David Beckham was doing, which was promoting Qatar, and what Joe Lycett was doing, was going there for a couple of gigs.
But this is,
However,
it's an own goal.
However, I do agree with you that when he started making the protest, what he should have done is fessed up and said, I was in Qatar, and explained that.
Yeah.
So
Of course
he should have done that. But there is a difference.
Because, for
between the
example, I mean, I actually wouldn't travel to these states. Now, that's for personal reasons, but I did go to Dubai for work in 2008.
I wouldn't go to Dubai. I wouldn't go to Dubai on holiday.
But I would hold my hands up if I was ever going to criticise Dubai and explain I was on a paid work trip. Now, look, yesterday, Westminster's toughest talking MP, our very own, Lee Anderson, welcomed us into his office as he read festive well wishes from members of the public. And despite a handful of socialist Scrooges sneaking this toxic jingle into the mix, our King of the North wouldn't let his Christmas spirit be dampened. Have a watch.
Hi, it's Lee. So I've just opened my emails and I've got this little gem. I don't know what he's trying to say, but have a listen. Whatever does he mean?
Mariah Carey it ain't. Kudos to Lee on his very funny response there, and a Merry Christmas to you. Nigel Nelson, Dominique Samuels, Dawn Neeson, do stand by because I'm very excited about this. Straight after the break, in just 2 minutes' time, after a year where we lost our beloved Queen, watched her grandson set fire to her legacy, said hasta la vista to Boris, and suffered at the hands of eco-terrorists. Who will be crowned the ultimate greatest Briton and Union Jackass of 2022? My superstar panel are going to run down the top 10. We're back in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time now to reveal the greatest Briton and Union Jackass of 2022. My superstar panel back with me for this, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. She's hosting this show tomorrow. Political commentator Dominique Samuels and the Sunday Mirror's political editor Nigel Nelson. And it's their nominations, by the way, and winners from across the year that we have used to come up with our official top 10 list, all of our superstar panellists across the whole week. So let's start by revealing the Union Jackasses of 2022. At number 10, we have the Ramona and zero COVID advocate Jeremy Hunt, who became Chancellor in a globalist coup in October. At number 9, the World Cup winner of virtue signalling hypocrisy and paid apologist for Qatar, David Beckham. And at number 8, it's an organisation, the British Bashing Corporation, always eager to put woke lefties before real Brits. At number 7, failed London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who is destroying the world's greatest city. At number 6, the Duchess of Delusion, it's Meghan Markle. At number 5, the Marxist Union Baron who's revelling in ruining all of our Christmases, Mick the Grinch Lynch. OK, to the top 5. At number 4, it's the rat of the jungle and the world's most cringeworthy politician. He wants forgiveness but deserves none, Matt Hancock. At number 3, the man on a crusade to undermine his late grandmother's life's work, Harry Windsor. And at number 2, she'll stop at nothing to get an independent Scotland, even if she ruins it in the meantime. It's scheming Sturgeon. But now, at number 1, who could have driven us all so insane with rage this year that they beat all of those other very annoying contenders? You know, it just had to be the eco-terrorists of Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. Look.
Just Stop Oil activists.
Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rebellion.
Just Stop Oil.
Just Stop Oil.
Just Stop Oil protesters.
Extinction Rebellion.
They left a Warwickshire farm in absolute devastation, plastic rubbish everywhere, and it points to the fact, are they actually about the environment, or are they just about attracting attention and disrupting our daily lives?
I really have much of a choice to be here if I want to save my two children's futures.
The people who started, started sticking themselves to classic paintings. Wearing a shirt that says Stop Oil. If they stopped oil, you wouldn't have any clothes, and you wouldn't have any soap, and you wouldn't have been able to get there on a bus.
I'm with you.
Diesel. They could get it every night, as far as I'm concerned, and that's the Extinction Rebellion lot.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God, I mean, they're just so tiresome, aren't they?
Just Stop Oil protesters for throwing chocolate cake at the person who is probably one of the greatest
oh, my goodness,
of
let's
the
have a quick
environment.
look at this. Idiots.
Just Stop Oil, funny enough, for being the irritating, deluded idiots that they are.
Louise for recklessly standing on a gantry to stop the M25.
I'm here
on a gantry, and I'm terrified
because I don't have a future.
The time for words is over.
And you might hate me for doing this, and you're entitled to hate me.
And I can't stand by and let it happen.
Why does it take young people like me up on a gantry on the M25 for you to listen?
They're so self-indulgent, and they're beginning to turn people against the idea that we should protect the environment.
I mean, how revolting is this? It actually makes me physically sick. I'm still feeling physically sick, actually. Nigel and Dawn, they were 2 of your nominees, so I presume you agree with that choice.
Not at all. I've changed my mind completely now. Yes, of course. Oh, my God.
The eco-terrorists bring together the left and the right of our superstar panel, Dominique.
Yes, they do, because we can all agree that they are just annoying and unhinged. But one thing I will say is that in order for this to actually stop, and I've said this so many times, mainstream broadcasters, I know you do this on here, but they actually need to challenge the claims. It's not we agree with what you're saying, but it's the aim. We disagree with what you're saying.
I know. If I hear another broadcaster say, oh, no, I know, or a judge actually saying, oh, I know you've got a really worthy, brilliant cause. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're trying to drive us back into the caves. But anyway, we're going to continue it next year. Don't you worry about that. But it is time now to reveal our greatest Briton of 2022. Let's start the countdown. At number 10, fearless campaigner for women's rights, J.K. Rowling. The woke mob tried so many times to cancel her, but she just got braver. At 9, former Home Secretary Priti Patel, who launched the Rwanda scheme. And at 8, our amazing Lionesses, Euro champions, and they went an entire year unbeaten. At number 7, this might surprise some people, Liz Truss, the globalist wets in her own party and the MSM, assured she was never given a chance to become a great PM. Number 6, Bowel Babe, broke her heart, didn't it, when Dame Deborah James passed. And at number 5, she's taking on the job no one else wants. It's Superwoman Suella Braverman. Will she take us out of the ECHR in 2023? At number 4, someone who actually knows how to be a princess, our beloved Kate, who's gone from strength to strength. At number 3, the free speech champion Elon Musk, who shook up Twitter in 2022. And at number 2, he was ousted from number 10 in an anti-democratic, MSM-driven coup. But we all remember that hasta la vista baby promise. It's Boris Johnson. But there was no contest when it came to our greatest Briton for 2022. Our greatest ever monarch, the late Queen Elizabeth II. Have a look.
It's the Queen. I mean, it could be the Queen every week. But just recently, because of sort of complicated COVID exposures via Prince Charles and possibly Camilla, she's been working from home and rapping that it's perfectly possible to do a good job from home.
Oh, what a terrible reason to nominate the Queen. She doesn't want to be working from home.
Her Majesty the Queen, God save the Queen, she recovered from the cold.
It's the Queen, obviously.
Yes, and it was great to see her smiling,
and she's
wasn't
better.
it?
Hooray!
Ooh, the Queen for her upcoming Vogue cover. It's amazing.
Oh, there she is. Look at that.
Oh, I love that. To celebrate her jubilee.
She's had years and years of service to the country, and even if you're not a royalist, you'll have to admit that she's done a very good job of representing Britain in both at home and abroad.
God save the Queen.
There's only one competitor in this, and it is, of course, our great and glorious, wonderful Queen.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here. For later.
Of course, I've got to go for the star of the show, Her Majesty the Queen.
She was our greatest ever monarch. She was a constant in all of our lives. She was the most famous woman in the world, a religious leader, a beacon of morality, a true modernizer. But she was also a devoted wife, a beloved mum, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. And like so many of you, I felt a personal connection to the Queen. She represented the greatest generation, like my grandparents who fought in World War II. She represented the sort of selflessness that we don't see in public figures anymore. Truly the best of British. And we will meet again, Your Majesty, one day. And it, of course, was one of the biggest news stories that any of us will cover. We knew it was coming, but it didn't make the impact any less significant, Dorness.
No, it didn't. I'm surprised now, even watching it back, especially the Paddington thing. It always gets you, doesn't it? How emotional I feel. I'm not particularly a royalist, but it was just the fact that she did such an amazing job, and that duty over all those years, we'll never see that again. And it just feels like a little part of us. We've lost something that we'll never have again.
And Nigel, what's so interesting watching back those moments is, of course, we did have hope earlier in the year because through treatment she was bouncing back at intervals, you know, so we didn't see her for a long time, and then all of a sudden she was just around the corner from our studio opening the Elizabeth line because it was something she so wanted to do, and she was able to drag herself effectively from her deathbed in order to do that. It was quite extraordinary.
And she looked great when she was with Paddington Bear during the Jubilee. I mean, that she looked really healthy, she looked fantastic. So when it happened, it wasn't so much a surprise, but it was a tremendous shock. And here's somebody, she reigned longer than any of us have been alive, and it's absolutely right, she is the greatest Briton.
She is. I mean, she's not just the greatest Briton of 2022. For me, Dominic, certainly during my lifetime, obviously I wasn't alive when Winston Churchill, for example, was on Earth, but she's the greatest Briton that's ever existed at the same time as me on this planet.
Yeah, and I think with her death, it does mark the end of an era in this country, and not to be negative, but I think, sadly, I'm not sure if the legacy that she left behind is going to be continued with King Charles. I mean, my scepticism has really increased, I'm afraid.
Well, the thing is, it's the end of the greatest generation.
Yeah.
That's what I think the Queen's death marked. And the thing about the greatest generation is they always put service ahead of self. And let's be honest, the generations that followed have not done that. So she was someone for us to look up to. She was someone for us to look up to. But look, there you go. There you go. It's been a sad year in a lot of ways, hasn't it?
It has, but I think we've all got good memories of a remarkable woman, and I think that's what we take. And the fact that she did that, she achieved that, I think that is worth everything.
And we were privileged to live through that period.
Absolutely,
we will.
Yeah.
The second Elizabethan age. I'm so proud to say that I lived through it.
Yeah.
But that brings me to an end of our first full year at GB News. I want to thank the incredible DW Tonight behind-the-scenes stuff, especially, by the way, our OG senior producer, she's in my ear tonight, Caroline Gawley, who sadly leaves us today. And I want to thank the whole team for being the sharpest and bravest in the business. But we couldn't have done any of this without you. Today we celebrated 10,000 hours on air here at GB News. And as our boss reminded us earlier, many commentators predicted we'd be off air by now. Instead, we've ended Sly News' undisputed 33-year reign as the biggest commercial news channel in prime time. And now we're coming for the British bashing corporation too. But none of this would be possible without you. So thank you. Keep spreading the word about us and have a peaceful and very Merry Christmas. I'm going to the other side of the world to be with my family, but we'll be back on January the 9th. Dawn Neeson, of course, here tomorrow night. I adore you all. Thank you for your support, GB News family. Have a really, really brilliant Christmas and very happy New Year. Good night.
Woo!
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your